My name is Jun Sung Hong. I go by Jun. I'm currently an assistant professor in the School of Social Work at Wayne State University, and I'm also an assistant professor in a South Korean university called Sungkyunkwan University, Department of Social Welfare.
You often hear that bullying can happen to anyone,
Yes.
which is true, but there are groups of kids that are at a high risk of being a target. And you have done studies on bias-based bullying. And
Yes.
what are your most important findings?
Well, to I guess like to give you a little synopsis of what I've been doing. So my focus has been on bias-based bullying. My research focus has been on bias-based bullying, which affects racial and ethnic minority, immigrants, which are my areas. Those who are LGBTQ, those with special health needs or with disabilities, as well as those who come from an economically disadvantaged backgrounds. Studies have found, consistently found, including my studies, that those with certain characteristics, such as the ones that I mentioned, are more likely to be bullied than others. So it's very important to take that into consideration in looking at bullying because bullying is not an equal opportunity act, and some kids are more affected than others.
Uh, can you tell us something about the ecological system framework? What is
Sure.
that?
So the ecological system framework that was actually developed by a renowned child psychologist named Uri Bronfenbrenner, who stated that we need to look at the context of a phenomenon rather than just individual characteristics like gender difference, sex difference, racial difference. Those are very important, but an individual behavior and attitudes are shaped by things that are occurring or their interactions in multiple environments, such as the home, school, neighborhood, workplace, and also culture.
And how would you explain racial or other microaggressions, which I know is one of your
Yes.
research interests?
So racial microaggression, for example, these are phrases that everyday phrases that racial and ethnic minorities hear that are not meant to be harmful, and in some cases they're meant to be like praise by the person that is perpetuating microaggression, but these everyday comments might be very, very offensive to the recipient. For example, in terms of like if you tell an Asian person like me, if somebody says to me like, "Oh, I heard all Asians are smart," it seems like a compliment, when in fact it could be a bit offensive because it's reinforcing stereotype. Or it could be other types of like insults, such as, for example, that's not fair. Like in the US, they say, like, that's not fair. You're getting a scholarship because you're a minority. And I don't believe in something called affirmative action. Um, some minorities might take that as offensive because, people are saying that, that person is getting special advantage or special advantages when in fact he or she is not. So those are just two of many types of microaggressions.
And in a school context, what can microaggressions do to a student or
Sure. Well, the difference between, let's say, blatant forms of racism or homophobia as opposed to microaggression is that, in case of racial, blatant form of racism, you know, the person who is the victim of racism, they would stand up because they know that it's wrong. Whereas, like in terms of microaggression, it's very elusive. It's not very clear, and there's always debate. So, for example, if you said something to me that was offensive, and I took it as an offense, and if I try to defend myself, then you'll say, you know what? You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You're making a big thing out of such a small thing. You're so petty. Then I'm left wondering, wait a minute, am I really being petty? Should I defend myself? So I might feel kind of psychologically distressed. And as a result, if people use comments, the similar comments, to me again, then I may not defend myself because I feel like I'm being petty. So it could reinforce, psychological distress for some people.
do you have any advice to give to schools who wants to create a safe and positive environment and who wants to reduce microaggressions,
Sure.
for example?
Like in terms of microaggressions, it's important to have an honest conversation about what might be considered offensive and what's not. And it's really important to educate not only students, but also teachers, because oftentimes teachers are the ones who reinforce microaggression. And the best advice I can give to any student or anyone who experiences microaggression is to be upfront and say, those phrases directed at me is considered a little bit offensive, but do it diplomatically. That's one thing. In order to create a safe school environment, it's important for teachers to be educated as well, although they're educators. But at the same time, it's important for teachers to also be educated to be involved when students are experiencing distress due to discrimination, bullying, microaggression, etc.
And finally, if you were asked to give one and only one advice to school staff on how to prevent overall bullying in their school, what would that advice be and why?
Please get teachers involved. Please get teachers to stand up, and try to be involved in, the lives of children who are being bullied. That's so important. I cannot emphasize enough how important that is because oftentimes teachers tend to overlook or feel that it's not in their backyard, so they might just overlook that.